Hello, everyone. Welcome back to one more quest. We are back. Took a couple week break because my wife had corrective eye surgery, and so that kind of took up most of our time for a few weeks while we were getting her recovered. But now that we're back in the swing of things, we've got another quest here for you. This one is called A Diamond in the Rough. This was a really fun one. It was kind of Tales of the Arabian Nights-y, sort of Aladdin type sort of stuff. I ran this with one player once again, and it was a level 5 character. It was a chaotic evil barbarian half orc, and let's go ahead and dive right in. The adventure starts off with the players en route to something else through some sort of desert. They see perpendicular to the trail leading off a bunch of footsteps. And these footsteps don't seem to disappear when the wind blows and the sand goes over them. And there's also some weird sparkly things among the footsteps, and upon closer investigation, they're fairly sizable jewels of various types. Emeralds, diamonds, sapphires, what have you. Just kind of a random smattering, as if they were cast down by someone in a rush. Now, following those footsteps and the ensuing trail of jewels, the players will reach a large city. This city has a big archway over it, with which this trail of footsteps goes through, which in a sort of a tabula rasa sort of way. Is that the right word? Tabula rasa? I don't know. That tablet with like the 5 different languages written on it? Yeah, that one. It says, "Welcome to the Oasis of Nahas" over it. And as the players are following this trail of jewels as it becomes, once they hit pavement and everything in the city, it will lead them eventually to a plaza. It will go through a marketplace and into a plaza where there is a large fountain, and the jewels lead straight up into this fountain, and the fountain is like filled to the brim with these jewels. Now, the thing that players may or may not notice is that the entire time they're wandering through this city, they don't see a single other person. The marketplace is all well attended. It's got fine silks as stall coverings and stuff. It's got, there's all sorts of different goods, fruits, vegetables, food, as well as equipment, items, weapons. All that sort of stuff is all there in perfect condition. But there's no one else there. Upon reaching the plaza with the fountain, or if the players clue into some things and start to retreat early, then a large beam of light will shoot out of the center of the city, out of the palace of the Oasis of Nahas. This golden bright light blasts out of the top of the palace and cascades down, forming a perfect dome around the city, sealing it off. It is an impenetrable magic wall, and the players are now trapped until they resolve the situation. Now, as soon as this happens, many undead will start to awaken throughout the city. This is because there is a bit of backstory to the city, as you might imagine. You can flesh out the details on your own and make it fit your campaign. But what I wrote down is that this was once a city that worshipped the god Lathander, the god of renewal and life, and the Sultan and his priests were obsessed with trying to find a way to obtain eternal life through the renewal of the body constantly. It was not like a necromancy sort of thing. It was a seeking of renewal and refreshing. The priests of Lathander eventually uncovered in a Cave of Wonders style plot a bottle containing an Afridi, who, when asked and opened from the bottle, said that it could grant the wish of the Sultan to give eternal life. It kind of smiled a little wickedly, and the priest did not like that, and so they turned it down. And it sat in its bottle for quite a while, decades, until the kingdom, the city of Nahas, the oasis of Nahas, are going through a lot of troubles. Stuff like war, famine, the Sultan having a son with a birth defect that meant it was not going to live for very long. Eventually, the Sultan breaks and uses his town palace guards and militia to steal the bottle from the priests of Lathander, who are insisting that nothing good can come from it. He opens it up and makes the deal. Eternal life for him and all of his subjects. At which point, the Afridi grants the wish. Now, they are cursed with eternal life. They wander the city as undead, in a state of complete sleep and inactivation, hiding in buildings and scaffoldings and other small, shadowy corners, until the Afridi is able to lure in adventurers or passers-by with the promise of riches. At which point, it seals off the city, and the villagers, compelled by their thirst for life, hound whoever is in there until they eventually succumb, absorbing that life energy into their own bodies, feeding it back to the Afridi, who then disperses it to the rest of Nahas. So, when that shield goes up, that sealing presence, all of a sudden, well, the undead wake up, and they start coming after the adventurers. This is something you're going to have to determine and balance around the party that you had. I had a level 5 barbarian with a 20 strength in this party, and he was able to dispatch a skeleton per hit. It was not super difficult for him to just auto-kill a skeleton. He got 2 attacks, 3 if he was raging. So I had to throw quite a bit more at him, and I threw in some additional skeleton types throughout this adventure, like Minotaur skeletons and stuff. The idea here is you don't want any one encounter to be overwhelming. The reason for that being there are 4 main locations in Nahas. There's the plaza with the jewels in the fountain. And by the way, if the players have been picking up all the jewels as they find them and pick up all the jewels in the fountain, they will have accrued over 5,000 gold pieces worth of jewels. So it's a hefty little reward for no real effort up until this point. And so there's the plaza that has a couple of skeletons in it. There's the merchant quarter, which has a random chance at finding certain kinds of stalls. So if they pass a search check of DC 14, then as the DM you roll on a 6-sided dice to see what kind of a stall that they found that is actually of benefit to them. So stuff that isn't fruit, stuff like, jewelry, which is worth a lot, precious gems, which is worth a lot, religious idols made out of gold and jewels, which is made a lot. Weapons, armor, items, all that sort of stuff is on that chart that the players can try and find. And these are all real items that exist and work just fine. However, as they travel between locations, so if they went from the plaza to the merchant quarter, for example, there is a very good chance that the Afridi in charge of this curse and in his station from the palace will know where they are and send some more undead after them. More random encounters. Once again, these should be small, death by 1,000 cuts. Every time they search, there should be a chance that that search has delayed them long enough that another group of undead has found them and is going to attack them. The third location in Nahas is the temple. This is where the players are going to be able to learn a lot of this backstory because the records of Nahas are kept there. All the civil records and the journals of Nahas's priests, the priests of Lathander. Outside of the temple, there are 4 scorpions, but they're not looking at you, at the players. They're looking towards the temple, and it looks like they haven't moved in ages. Upon dispatching them or getting past them, the players will find quite a lot of dead priests in the temple. One other detail, very important to mention, I forgot this in my playtest as well. It's easy to forget, but I feel it's extremely important to give players a reason to come here. This is the signposting that says it is worth it to explore here. The big shield that is going around the city completely dissipates around the temple. There's just this like little hole on top of it. So if the player could fly, they could technically escape that way. So just over that temple, no shield up above. It is like a null zone for the Afridi's magic. And these undead priests, or they're not undead, these dead priests stay dead. They are not undead. They have starved to death. They have been bitten by scorpions. They have withered away. Lathander blessed that temple, consecrated that ground that the Afridi's powers would have no effect over them, and it would not be able to enter. So this is actually an area where the players could take a long rest if they wanted. They're able to find a bunch of records in these journals of these priests, kind of detailing the history of Nahas and the deal that the Sultan made, as well as the aftermath of that, of how the city inhabitants have started to grown hollow inside, and their flesh is starting to slough off, and they wander around as unholy skeletons escaped from the cycle of renewal and rebirth that Lathander preaches. One particular, I've got a little bit of a story bite here that you can feel free to read or not. I am doomed to stay in this temple. My only refuge from the monsters my countrymen have become. Sentinels stand at the door. I am afraid I was stung by one of them in an attempt to escape. I feel its venom crawling through me. My left leg is useless now. It's only a matter of time before it reaches my heart. To anyone who finds this, please, remove the lamp from the city. Imprison the foul creature that has cursed us so, and let these poor souls rest. Not brilliant writing, but neither would a priest. And neither would I, because I'm not a brilliant writer. You may be able to come up with something better, or not use it at all. That's up to you. You're the DM. But it does give players who may not understand exactly what the next direction they should take, where they need to go. In the game that I played, this temple was never even explored. The player with the barbarian, he understood what the scenario was. He knew it was going to be death by 1,000 cuts. He did not really know how to recover health as a barbarian. Short rests almost haven't really been taken very much by this player in New D&D. And so that mechanic was a little bit lost on him. And so he decided, you know what, I need to just barrel through this. I need to be the big half-orc barbarian. I just need to charge through and get towards the center of that light. That's probably where I need to go, and he was completely right. The center of that light, as I mentioned before, is the palace. This is the home of the Afridi and his bottle, hanging suspended above the palace in a skylight type sort of location. There are a lot of doors, a lot of entryways in this palace, but when you walk through any door that is not the main entry hall, you are able to see the room that you're walking into, and you step through the door, and you are now on the other side facing the direction you just came from. That is to say that the rooms are not actually enterable. I didn't want this to become a big long dungeon crawl. There was enough play here already. If you want to, you can build out a palace and have a bunch of encounters in there. I wanted to get people straight to the meat of the adventure and of the story. So I say the Sultan is stopping any entry points into the palace that isn't into his main trap area, which is the Great Hall. This is where the Sultan rests in a giant throne with a large statue of the symbol of Lathander, a pathway winding off into a sunset. Cascades above him, 20 feet tall, almost reaching the ceiling. Large tapestries come down either side with the royal colors coming down from the ceiling, and large pillars line the hall, going down with little alcoves in between each pillar far off to the edges where vaguely human shadows are seen to be. As soon as a player enters this grand hall, the Sultan, who is a souped-up zombie, will get up from his throne and pick up a giant two-handed scimitar and start dragging it along the floor as it shuffles over to the player. and these alcove human-shaped shadows step out from their refuges and reveal themselves to be palace guard skeletons, which are also beefed up skeletons. There are 4 palace guard skeletons and the 1 sultan zombie, which I have written down here. In my game that I ran, the player didn't even bother fighting these guys. He knew this is kind of near the end. I need to get out of here. I need to get to where that light is. Far above the throne, and therefore a couple feet above the statue, there's a big skylight area. The idea is the sun would come in and shine down on the sultan and make him very majestic. But hanging above that little alcove is that lamp, is that the bottle. The bright light shooting up and out, forming the shield over the city. My player jumped up onto pillars, climbed up, while all the skeletons and zombies threw their weapons at him, causing a ton of damage. He leapt up onto a tapestry from the pillar and climbed the rest of the way up, and made his way up to the top, where the lamp was. He knocked it out of its levitation. He kind of bashed it with his great axe, and it went flying off the side of the palace and landed. Now, my original thought here was that a player would grab the lamp and run, take it out of its beaming of light and get out of dodge, at which point the Afridi will start a very long chase sequence, a skill challenge, where it is throwing fireballs and all of its spells, trying to stop the players while they are escaping the city. Now, the Afridi is technically doomed to serve and keep on generating eternal life for the city, but he has a large amount of autonomy here. He doesn't have people constantly making wishes of him. He just kind of gets to live his life, and that's preferable to whoever these people are. This is a new situation, and he doesn't like that. So he's going to try and stay in the city. As soon as the players are able to get the bottle out of that beaming light, the shield goes down around the city, and the city starts to crumble. It's eternal life waning. Buildings will shatter and crumble. The fruit in the merchant stalls will rot rapidly. The skeletons and zombies will just dissipate into dust as the player is then forced to rush out of the city. This provides a lot of fun opportunities. The Afridi could be casting spells and lobbing stuff at the players, trailing behind the bottle in a connection of red smoke with his upper torso manifest as he's lobbing things at the players. It could be buildings that are falling down on top of the players and they need to get out of there. That's going to be a skill challenge. That's up to you as the DM to run, and is a really satisfying way to end the story as they get just outside of the city limits and the last buildings have fallen to the ground and they've been able to escape with whatever treasure they have, and the Afridi is trapped inside his bottle. That is not what my player did, however. He knocked the bottle off of the roof, sidled over to where it landed in the garden, took a big overhead swing with his axe, and broke the bottle. I decided that it didn't break earlier because it was still trying to fulfill its mission, fulfill the wish that it had been given for eternal life. And until that wish was completed, or disrupted in some way, the bottle could not be affected by any bodily harm. However, being knocked outside of the Pillar of Light, its purpose, it being disabled, essentially, the wish being removed until it was reseated, well, very fragile. And out came an Afridi in all of its CR11 glory against this level 5 barbarian. He pulled out his scimitar, lit his hand on fire, looked at him, and said, "Run." Which would have been a very reasonable thing to have done. However, this was a chaotic evil barbarian who knew that Afridis were lawful evil. And so he managed to coerce and cajole and convince the Afridi that by giving it its freedom, it really did deserve to give him one wish. He rolled extremely well, and the Afridi chuckled, sheathed his scimitar, folded his arms, and said, "Very well, mortal. You get one wish. Choose wisely. At which point he took about 5 minutes to think about what his wish could be to avoid falling into a pitfall that Nahas itself had just barely fallen into. And he kept it fairly simple. He wished, I wish to be taken home with all the jewels that I can carry, and I don't want you to come after me or my home ever. The Afridi smiled, snapped, and in a flash of bright flames swirling around the barbarian, and they dissipate in a sudden gust of wind, he found himself in his old child home, filled to the brim with jewels as he collapses on the ground, unable to support their weight. Now, the twist that I thought was going to happen here would really only work in a campaign setting, where the Afridi would then decide, I don't like having been somewhat outwitted by this mortal. I am going to start to amass an army and chase him down. I will never hurt him, but my subjects sure will. My player had a better idea, I feel, for a one-shot, which is getting teleported back home, but as a baby. Back in time, he is now a little child barely holding up one jewel as it falls to the ground and maybe clatters underneath a piece of furniture as the mother comes in and tries to find out what the disturbance was. So that's it. That's a diamond in the rough. As always, we've got the reference sheet down in the description down below. If you run this, please let me know. I would love to know how it goes. I'd love to hear your story. And let me know as well if everything that is in that sheet is what you would expect to be there. But again, it's meant to be a quick reference. This video is meant to give you the full context. That sheet is just to be there to kind of help you out while you're at the table, to remember what you need to do, to keep certain numbers in your head, keep certain encounters in your head, and leave the rest of it open for you as the DM to fill in with the details appropriate to your game. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. If this was helpful for you, please like, please subscribe. I guess that's what YouTube channels do. We'll see you next week for one more quest.